Okay, so we have our E-60 in the vise. This happens to be the back of the unit. The way we have our vise mounted on the bench, this is the easiest way for us to work on an E-60. We have the motor hanging off the side here. It's usually very difficult to get this motor off. By having it off the side, it gives us more room to work. This is the first generation motor. This is a Fenner. The carbon brushes are here, and moisture is usually a problem with these. Here's an end cap that goes on this unit. This isn't off of this particular unit. This is off a different one. There's two screws that hold it on that we removed, and we used a hammer and a screwdriver to remove the cap from the unit because they're usually pretty corroded inside. This one has a typical corrosion. One of the problems with these units is that from the factory they come with a plastic drain plug in the bottom of the cap. And 9 times out of 10 when one of these units comes in, the plastic drain plug was never removed. Therefore the unit will hold moisture. You can barely make out here where the drain plug should be. This one we actually removed when it came in. We were going to send it back out, and the owner decided to upgrade to a newer motor because these are prone to failure. One of the reasons being that the moisture lays in here, and the carbon brush on the bottom, the spring that keeps it against the armature, erodes and corrodes until finally it cracks or disintegrates, and then you lose contact with one of the brushes and the motor starts acting funny. The other problem with these units is corrosion between the motor and the base, the sump base. Eventually the motor itself loses its ground, and then you start to have problems with malfunctioning. Your solenoid under the hood, the motor solenoid is clicking, and you think, well, it's a bad motor solenoid, let me change the bad motor solenoid. And that's not the problem. The problem is the motor's not grounded. It's getting power, it just has no ground. So we'll get to that in a little bit. Usually we drain these. The drain plug is right here on the bottom. I'm going to start this one by cleaning up this top portion. This one was on the truck for a very long time. The owner admitted, he said he hasn't had it off in many years. He believes it's a 1999. We'll find out when we open it up because there's a cast date on the sump base itself that'll indicate the year it was manufactured, and they're typically installed within a year or two unless there's an accident that causes the base to need to be replaced, which is not the case with this one. So to remove our top cap, we have to make sure that this lift ram is clean, and you can see how badly rusted this one is. So we have to smooth this out. Number one, to remove the top cap, as I just said. But number two, to install the cap after the rebuild with a nice new wiper and seal. And we don't want to chew up that wiper or seal when we're installing it. So first we're going to clean this up. Secondly, we have to make sure that the shaft is round. Usually around this hole you'll get a ridge, mostly on the bottom. And you have to file that away or grind that away. I can see this one has a flat spot here, but on this side it's bulged out pretty good. So I got my safety glasses on, and I'm going to use a 4.5 inch grinder with a wire brush to clean this up, and it's going to get loud, so here we go. Now, to get the other sides, you can take a large screwdriver, slide it through, and spin the lift ram. Now I can access the other side. There's no harm in rotating the lift ram. some additional rust down here where it's difficult to get. So what we'll do is we'll wait until it's off and we'll clean the shaft before we put the new one on. You can see that flat spot here I was talking about. Maybe you can't. It's got quite a bit of wear. This is actually one of the worst shafts I've seen as far as the exposed portion. Usually this still has the chrome on it because from the factory it's painted. And because the lift arm sits on here and it covers it, it usually stays protected and the chrome doesn't wear off like that or rust away. So, like I was saying, you have to have no ridges on here. And there's a pretty good ridge on this side. Now normally I just grab the grinder and do it, but I don't feel like changing the wheel to a stone. So I'm just going to grab a hand file here and see how much it's going to take to dress this up. I'm holding it perfectly flat to the cylinder, to the lift ram. And we'll see how much I got to take off because this is going to shine up what needs to be removed. There's not that much. Alright, that's clean. Got rid of that burr. I don't know if you can see that, but the burr's gone now. There's no ridge, so the cap should slide right off. We'll do this side, touch it, see if that's not a problem on this side. Alright, for draining the unit, which is I guess what we should do now, these actually hold quite a bit. I think what I'm going to do first actually is show you how difficult it is to typically remove these motors. So, you can see this is a problem. This nut is seized on here. You're never going to get that off without snapping the stud using a socket or a wrench. I'm getting ahead of myself. Let's remove the ground bolt first. Obviously, the owner of this unit has not been cleaning his ground connections every year, as he should be. The unit will work a lot better if it's got a good ground. Pretty heavy corrosion on this ground. We just throw these away. We use a new ground bolt, a new tooth washer when we do a rebuild. And we actually clean the ground location. And usually do it before we forget. Like now, when we remove the ground bolt, we'll just take the grinder. Clean the surface there. We'll actually run a tap in there to chase the threads and get any corrosion out of the threads before we reassemble it. It's easier to run a tap in there with the valve block removed. So. Now, like I said, there was 2 screws that were holding the cap on. Well, now these 2 screws, long cap screws, hold the motor to the sump base. The heads on are 3/8. Sometimes I'll use a ratchet. Usually I can't find it, so I just grab a wrench. And we'll see. This one may make a liar out of me. I never know what I'm going to find. Sometimes they come off easy, and sometimes they're very difficult to get off. I'm thinking that this is going to be a very difficult to get off because so far these bolts aren't moving. Oh, there's one. Now, typically the bottom is always harder because the same way the moisture lays in the bottom of this cap, well, moisture actually gets in between here, between the base of the motor and a motor plate, mounting plate on the side of the sump base, or sump base cover, sump cover, whatever you call